time once again to slip into your camo, grab your bow, and join us out in the field for another episode of the Up North Journal, presented by PSE Archery. The Up North Journal crew is knocked and ready to rock for another exciting adventure. So let's step outside and hit the trail.
This episode of the Up North Journal podcast is brought to you by PSE Archery,
Buck Baits,
Better the Hunt,
Rebel 6 Rubs and Seasonings,
Easy Cut,
Limb Walker Game Calls,
Sunrise Archery,
Total Peep,
Hunter's Blend Coffee,
Packer Max,
Fourth Arrow Camera Arms,
Scent Blocker,
Scent Lock,
Copper John,
and Stanislawski Release Aids. Welcome back to another episode of the Up North Journal, everybody. Host Mike Adams sitting in the cabin tonight with Dan DeFaw as he's busy getting his shares out of the way. And while he's doing that, let's take care of some quick business. One of the things that we like to promote here is Hunter's Blend Coffee. I got my cup tonight right here. And if you go over to huntersblendcoffee.com and use the promo code, which you can see right there, capital U, capital N, capital J, you'll save 10% on your order when you get over there. So make sure you go over and check them out and save some money. But that is not all. Hunting season is just around the corner. Danny and I have been shooting our bows this weekend and been thinking about buck baits. If you go over to buckbaits.com and use the Up North Journal promo code, you'll save 20% on your order. They've got all kinds of good stuff over there for deer hunting, from lures and baits and things you can put out to attract deer, other critters if you're into trapping, or maybe you drew an elk tag this year and you need some elk urine, or you got a bear tag, need some bear urine. So they got all that kind of stuff over there. They got some new yardage markers if you want to sit in a tree stand and mark at different spots out so you know your distance. But that's not all. We got one more, and that is Rebel 6 Rubs. Rebel 6, go over rebel6.com or rebel6rubs.com and use the North Journal promo code, and you save 20% on your order over there when you check out. And when you get that deer, put some Rebel 6 on it. So,
absolutely.
All right. That's taking care of business, Dan.
Absolutely. Let's rock and roll. Because you know what? Speaking of rock and roll, we know a rock and roll kind of chick.
Do we?
We do. She rock and roll podcasts.
Oh, wait. You know what? We've lost her.
What?
She is off. We got to dial her back up here.
Ow.
I tell you what.
Let me dive off here while you talk to the...
All right. So for those on the podcast, we're going to take a quick little stop here as Danny makes a connection change so we can redial our guest. Okay. So, for those of you on the podcast, we've got Carrie back. Okay. We're live.
Mike, your audio is a little muffled.
My audio...
Dan's is fine.
Well, let me bring mine up just a touch there.
I'm actually fine.
Yeah, okay. There we go.
Fixed my microphone.
There's been gremlins in this place for the last 2 weeks, I swear. So, all right. Well, Carrie, it's good to have you on the show.
Me.
And now we're dropping out a little bit on your end. Are you still there with us?
Oh, great. Technology. I can hear you fine. Can you hear me okay?
Okay, yep. You were dropping out just a little bit there for a second. That's odd.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
Oh, bizarre.
Yeah, it's sounding real tinny, like you're like in a tin can. It's maybe the connection is not good. Maybe somebody hit a power pole outside your house or something.
Right?
But what would be the odds the one time I actually really, really, really need my internet service?
Right? This is crazy.
Well, let us tell you how that works, because it happens here in the last couple of weeks that we've needed it to work, and all of a sudden things happen, and it's like,
right.
All of a sudden you find mysterious things pop up on your computer going, you're like, uh-oh.
All right, so, back to the podcast. Let's rock and roll here.
All
Let's
right,
see what we can do.
What I said was, before we brought you on, I don't know if you heard me, speaking of rock and roll chicks, that rock and roll podcast, let's go right to her. And then we went right to you, and there was nothing there. But we finally got you there. Now people can people can totally see what we're talking about.
So how you doing, Carrie?
Right. I am great. Thank you so much for having me on the show again. I love coming on Up North Journal. Obviously, you guys are my first and favorite podcast.
Well, we appreciate it.
We do.
Yeah, we go back a ways, like probably all the way back to first year, I think.
Way.
So, man, that was a long time ago.
08?
So we could not age
7.
ourselves. That'd be great.
What's that?
We could not age ourselves. That'd be great.
Well,
right, yeah.
There's no way you cannot age yourself when you're sitting next to the godfather of podcasting himself.
Stop it. I'm
True story.
I'm going to hit him.
Thank you. True story. Yep, exactly. And you totally know what I mean. So, you know what?
I've been called worse. A lot worse.
We're having you on the show not just because no reason, but you got a reason because you relaunched something.
Yeah, let's talk about this new podcast. Well, this
Relaunch
podcast
2.0
of BowCast. I remember back when I started, that was the archery school style podcast to listen to. I mean, they started about the same time we did, and and now you have got it and you're bringing it back. Take us to the Wayback Machine, and because you worked with those guys, and bring us up to speed with kind of how things evolved there.
Sure. I actually got my start in the outdoor industry, whatever you want to call it, way back in the beginnings when, I don't know, it wasn't even a thing to be, I don't know, you guys were like one of the very first outdoor podcasts that I ever listened to. And I still to this day remember listening to you. I'd get up Monday morning before work and I'd quick download all the Apple, I'd go to the Apple.
Mm-hmm.
It was iTunes.
It was
right?
iTunes.
Now it's like Apple Podcasts or something. Yeah. And I download all the Up North Journal episodes or the new one or whatever, get caught up. And then you guys talk so much about hunting and fishing, but not a ton about bow hunting. And
Mm-hmm.
I was interested in getting into bow hunting. And I remember reaching out to you and I was like, do you have any resources? Can you kind of nudge me in the right direction? Whatever, just as a listener, just as a follower. And then you were like, yeah, you got to check out this podcast called BowCast. They know what they're talking about when it comes to archery and bow hunting. And I was like, okay. I think I must have binged like 60 episodes that week. No joke. And my head was just like exploding.
Right?
Information. It was bananas. But so I was listening to them, and I went out and I bought a Parker bow and thought it was super cool and trying to learn and going through all the techniques and tactics that they talked about. And then I to be honest with you, I sent them a really snotty email because I went to their store and I wanted to buy a t-shirt. And all they had were sweatshirts, and I think all they had was hoodies, actually. And I was just annoyed, and I was just kind of being bitchy. And I sent them this really snotty email about, like...
You?
Well...
A snotty email?
I know. I have no filter sometimes, even back then. And I was like, this sucks, blah, blah, blah. And Anil Roney, emailed me back, and he's like, so you're just getting into archery, huh? We should talk, because you're kind of a spitfire. I was like, oh, really? So then I just started blogging for them, just detailing my journey from a traditional rifle hunter into a bow hunter. And it was a struggle, and it was a lot of challenges. My husband at the time, he didn't hunt at all. Mm-hmm. So it was just me really learning only from internet resources. And back then we didn't have the internet like it is today.
Right.
God.
Right.
If we had back then what we had today, I probably would be shooting worlds by now because, my God, the amount of information that's out there now it's
overload.
Crazy.
Yeah.
It is.
And even back then, like you said, BowCast was kind of overload. And, I started as a kid shooting archery, and I started hunting when I was 12 with a bow, but I didn't know anything, and we started the podcast and started our journey, and it was the same thing as you. That's the reason I listened to them, was to get better at shooting a bow.
Yeah, it was, and they were so technical. They weren't just sitting around swapping stories and stuff or bragging or anything. They were going through their hunts and their practices step by step and sharing what they did wrong, what they did right, things they could improve on, things or the steps that they did for paper tuning or whatever the case may be, or why they chose this particular rest rather than this rest. I mean, you could sit there with a notebook and jot down notes for an hour listening to them and still have to go back and listen to it a second time just to absorb all the information that they were throwing out into the world. It was wonderful.
Isn't that amazing what podcasting, let alone the internet, has done in that case? Before, it was like, wow, I really need to know something, so I got to go to my local pro shop, talk to this. And I remember this because I was way back. It was like, he was an older gentleman, and he was the guy you'd talk to learn everything. And, and it's like, you maybe talk, I think there was maybe 5 people in the store that that was your knowledge base.
Right.
Right? And so, but now look at it. Now look at it at your fingertips.
Or dad or whoever, yeah.
Right, exactly. Look at it now. You go in and do a search and type it in, and man, it's thousands.
Absolutely.
Thousands, yes.
Well, you brought up a good point. You say you could sit and write. I remember writing notes on things like practicing or, paper tuning, just different techniques and things, because I was so hungry for archery information. And if you weren't one of the guys in the shop. I mean, as far as like
The guys, yeah.
you know, in that inner circle,
The cool guys, yeah.
you bought your bow. You know, if you're lucky enough to buy one at a pro shop, and they'd set it up for you, and away you went. You know, and you come back when you need more arrows. Yeah, and that's kind of the way we all started. So
right, exactly, and that's you know, I don't know about you, Carrie, but over there, you know, over here, archery shops aren't on every corner like a big box store.
They are here. I have like 4 of them within 10 miles of me.
That's awesome.
We're pretty lucky that way, and they're great shops. Really
That's good.
Great shops.
That's a good thing.
Yeah. And you know, too, I know everybody. It's so funny because we've all been podcasting for well over a decade now, and if I had a nickel for any time anybody said, well, why don't you do video? Why don't you have a vidcast? Blah, 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 blah. You know what, though? I remember back in the day when I was listening with my little iPod and my earphones and listening to Anil and Anthony go through the steps, and I was out there in the backyard doing the steps with them. You can't do that if I'm trying to watch a YouTube video.
right.
It was really like they were there right next to me telling me what I needed to do. And I personally felt that I absorbed the information much better, and just the takeaways were greater for me in that aspect, rather than watching a video and then trying to go out there and try to remember what exactly they said 17 minutes ago.
Right.
You know, it was a little more real time. I love podcasts.
You know, that's a great point I never really thought about, but it makes complete sense. Oh, I went running the other night, and I loaded up my iPhone with your episodes of BowCast, and I'm running and I'm listening to it, and there's so many things that came flooding back, and it's like you guys, it's like, you know, you and your guests and me were sitting around a campfire talking. I'm like, yeah, that's right, I remember that, you know, or I remember,
right?
You know, when we used to do that. There's something different about the podcast versus this form that we're in right now with a vidcast, for those that are watching versus listening on the podcast. So that makes sense.
Sure.
And I really think that the vidcast is just an evolve of podcasting,
sure.
you know.
Yeah.
And but it's like Mike said, loaded up, went running. Other people, when we have certain things that we have visuals, we tell them, well, you missed it on the podcast.
Go back and watch it. Yeah. So, you know,
Well, there are pros and cons to each.
Absolutely.
Visually, YouTube videos and such can be very distracting, where you might miss some of the verbiage, you know, being spoken. When I listen to a podcast, I listen like that's my 100% focus is on the words, and it kind of makes me focus. Where sometimes I'm watching some of the videos and sort of listening, but then I'm paying attention more to what's going on visually. But there are some people who just listening to something would get bored, then they'd end up, you know, doing other stuff, where YouTube videos or the visual aspect is really what they need to learn. So there's pros and cons to each, I think.
Absolutely. Well, I tell you what, we're coming up on our first break here. When we come back, I got a question I want to ask you. I'm not going to give it away just yet and get your opinion on something.
Okay.
So
right.
We're going to step outside. We'll be right back after this.
PSE Archery has reinvented the way you buy bows.
From now on, you can make the most educated decision possible.
By basing your bow choice specifically on your shooting needs and goals.
All you need to do is ask yourself, what kind of shooter am I? What do I want to achieve?
PSE will help find the right category for you.
So, what kind of shooter are you?
Find out at psearchery.com.
Welcome back, second segment of the show. Talking with Carrie Z of BowCast and Hunt Fish Travel Podcast. So, yeah, you know, you mentioned that all the years between us we've got into podcasting. It's a few with all the different episodes, but just specifically about back when you guys, when you were with BowCast the first time, you think back at that time, and we've been talking about how I think they were really before their time. As much information as they were giving out, and the craving of people in the archery industry. If you look back, how many people do you really think that have excelled at archery now because of what you guys were doing back then? I mean, is it a number you can even think about?
I have no idea, because it was the first archery and bow hunting, like strictly archery and bow hunting podcast. There wasn't anything else out there like that, but I couldn't tell you. We had hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people active in the forums on a daily basis. So, I mean, I couldn't even put a number on it. And I know the downloads were in today's standard, freaking phenomenal back then. But But again, there wasn't a saturated market. The content was amazing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it was super educational. And I don't know. I know a lot of the people in the forums, because they were one of the few who had forums. I mean, there's other forums still to this day, but even back then it was just a dumpster fire of archery in there.
Mm-hmm.
And the BowCast forums were very strictly moderated. And literally, you'd go in there and there'd be hundreds of comments from the day from different people, not just like the same 8 people, just tons of people active in there. So I can't even give you an honest number, thousands probably.
Yeah,
those guys whose lives they touched.
Absolutely, you know, and I think it made a huge impact in the archery industry, and I don't think we'll ever really know just how big it was. I mean, we can guess, but I mean, for me, it taught me at the time how to become a better archer. It got me out of my comfort zone. You know, I remember the first time I stepped out to 60 yards and let an arrow fly. I'm like, oh, I just hope I hit the bail, you know. And man, when you start to stick arrows at 60 yards, you feel 10 feet tall and bulletproof, and then it makes that shorter shot. And we've talked about this on the show. It makes those 20 and 30 yard shots so much of a chip shot at that point. And you know, and now we're stepping out even further. It's incredible what they did for us. But you know, look. Go ahead.
Oh, just think about that. Remember back in the day when Anthony was doing all Full Moon Productions was doing all those movies?
Yes.
And everybody was just hammering on them for taking the 80 and 90 yard shots. I mean, you just didn't do that. Shame on you for doing it, for taking that 60 yards. Shame on you. What were you thinking? And now but they kind of taught us that it was okay to take those shots that were somewhat outside of our comfort zone, that we practiced at, but that we were comfort in.
Right.
And it's just so different nowadays. God, remember, they would just get annihilated.
They weren't the only ones. I remember.
No, right.
You know, when the juries were one of them that I know were starting to take those long turkey shots, 60, 70 yards, and people were just going crazy and yelling at him, "What are you doing?" Blah blah blah. And he said, "Look, this is what we practice."
Right. Well, just like at ATA when we go to watch the Badlands Film Festival, and you see that's all you see is these incredible shots, and everybody in the whole place stands up and just roars when they smoke the animal. You know, it's because it's a different world now. You're right.
But you're right. So, you know, it's always those first couple of people that when you start to see it or hear about it, they always get knocked down or whatever it is, and all of a sudden, through the cycle of time,
now they're trailblazers.
Yeah, now they're like, hey, wow, we're doing. Wow, I guess I got to practice that, and I got to go do that.
Yeah, and then you go, wow, I can do this.
Yep, and then you know, and then other people see you, and then you know, and then they go, would you take that shot? Yep, I would now.
Yeah.
A couple years ago, I wouldn't think about it, but now,
right?
You know, I'm all right with it.
Absolutely.
So you know, and then Carrie, you know, with this podcast, you're doing so what to make this story to get to 2.0? How did that all come about?
You know, so I was with BowCast for like 4 or 5 years, and then I just went through a bunch of change. You know, podcasts change, they evolve, they get new hosts, the leadership changed a bit, people step away. And I kind of just fell off the radar and just started doing my own thing. And I wasn't really a part of the podcast. I was a blogger. I was not really a part of the podcast at the time. But so when I peeled off and started doing my own thing, I'm like sitting around like, what should I do? Well, I guess maybe I'll start a podcast. So I started the Hunt, Fish, Travel podcast. But as time went by, there would be periods where BowCast would sit idle. And I would message them. I must have messaged them at least 3 times offering to purchase BowCast. Each time I was turned down. The last time I messaged Tim Endsley about 1.5 years ago. It was at least 1.5 years ago. And I was like, man, you're not doing anything with it. Come on, people.
Right.
Give it give me a number. What do you want me to purchase? Price, whatever. So he and I actually talked, and we were going to co-host together. And his life path started diverging off. He's so big into the rodeo scene. He was a rodeo guy back in the day, and he kind of started coming full circle back to that. So he's on the road a lot, and he's doing video production and stuff. He is super busy. And we try to coordinate and then try to coordinate, and it just didn't work out. So it sat for about 1.5 years. And finally I was like, look, you're just, you're happy with the rodeo stuff. I really want to take this and run with it. Give me a number. He gave me a number. I wrote a check, a good check, and purchased the rights, logos, and all previous content to the show with the intent of just circling back to those original episodes where it was how-to tutorials and tips and tactics, because that's really what touched my life and really changed my life personally. So I wanted to see it circle back. With new hosts, you have new directions of a show. That's just how it works. I mean, everybody has a different idea of how a show should be presented, whether it's sitting around and talking to the same buddies over and over again, or whatever the case may be. I just wanted to bring it full circle and just kind of pay a homage to the original show that had such a momentous impact on my life and set me on this path to archery and bow hunting, which has literally shaped my life. So that's how it all came about.
So that was BowCast up until now, which your relaunch is BowCast 2.0.
It is. I just kind of put the 2.0 out there. Well, so the previous host let the bowcast.com domain expire, and a pirate company picked it up and has been trying to sell it to me for $8,000 for, I don't know, forever. And I'm like, no. So I registered bowcast.net. So I put the BowCast 2.0 so that people would understand that while I'm trying to bring it back to its roots, it's the relaunch. It is a separate show. I don't want to take anything away from Anil and Anthony and the project that they did and the project they put together, because what they did is just completely special and separate on their own. And I'm just kind of bringing back to the fundamental and the philosophies that they were preaching as far as archery. So the 2.0 is just kind of here's BowCast 2.0 relaunch. It's kind of the same show, kind of not, because it's got a different host, but still the same tenets, if that makes sense.
Oh, absolutely. It makes sense.
Okay.
Yeah, and really, like you said, things have come so far from when it started. Back then it was just this plethora of knowledge. But the technical side of archery, at least for me, I mean, I'm learning a lot more of it now. But it's advanced so much. It's changed so much. And it's like, wow. There's so much more to learn. So I think you got it at a great time to take it and run with it and bring that same flair and flavor back to the archery world to share and get those people on and talk about this stuff. I think it's awesome.
It's a lot. It's been really cool. The reception that I've received from people who are like, oh, BowCast, oh man, I used to listen to that, or oh man, I used to be on those forums. It's good to see that it's getting relaunched or revitalized or whatever. But then there's those people who are like, I searched for it, and I swear I've heard of it, but I can't find it anywhere. And I'm like, that's because we're relaunching. It's at idle for a while, and now we're just so the reception's been amazing, which makes me happy because
that's
I don't know. It is, and it's kind of, I don't know. I would just want to do it justice. I don't want to step on any toes of those who came before me, who set this, train in motion. I don't want to step on anybody's toes. I don't want to say, oh, well, I'm going to take it and I'm going to do better, because that's not the goal and that's not the point of this. The point of this is, like you said, archery tactics and gear has changed incredibly in the last 10 years. While some of it hasn't. So let's revisit some of those episodes and some of those show topics that we all sometimes need a refresher on.
Yeah, it's funny you said that about archery gear and whatnot, because you'll get the people that some, they got to have the latest and greatest every year, so they'll buy something different every year. Or you get the opposite, which, hey, I used this back in 1999, and I'm still using it today, and I'm going to continue to use it. That's fine.
That's fine, because it still shoots and still kills deer or whatever, or paper or whatever you're shooting at.
Right, exactly.
Totally, I know. And the original show also was very Western hunting heavy, and it was very compound bow heavy. And, I mean, I'm a compound bow shooter, and it doesn't really ever occur to me to touch on traditional archery topics. I've had 5 or 6 people just in the last couple of weeks since we relaunched message me and ask if there's going to be anything for the traditional hunters out there or the traditional shooters. And I got to thinking about that, and I'm like, you know what? Of course there is. So there's a lot of really great people. There's a ton of traditional shooters. I just did an episode last week. I did the interview with Justin Ma, he does traditional Chinese, Mongolian shooting styles. Oh my God, it was like the coolest episode, just because everybody sees those, horseback riding Mongolian bows and stuff, and he explains the difference, and the difference between the compound and the tradition. I mean, it was just a really cool episode that I probably wouldn't have sought out that information, because it's not that I don't care. It's just that I'm not interested in that style.
Mm-hmm.
But there are a lot of traditional shooters who are. And it made me really happy that I got so many messages within a week of relaunching with people who were requesting content. And not just traditional. I got a ton. I have a laundry list of episodes I need to record, apparently. But that makes me happy, because it means that people are invested, they're interested, and they're paying attention.
Well, I think, at least here, like you said, from the West here to the Midwest, we run into people all the time. You like, we'll have our PSE shirt on, and we'll be at the gym or something, and somebody will walk up to you and go, "Hey, I noticed you wear a lot of hunting stuff in here. Hunting, tees. You shoot a bow?"
Yeah.
Well, next thing you know, we're standing there for 2 hours. I haven't lifted any weights, and we're talking about a hunt. We're swapping, looking at pictures, swiping through our phones and everything. It's, but yeah, there's a hunger out there for people that might be, like you said, afraid to ask. But if they see somebody with hunting garb on, they'd ask somebody like that. But on the internet, I still think sometimes people are like afraid to ask that question. Do you run into that?
Yeah.
You think there's more people out there,
especially with female shooters?
Okay. Well, I tell you what.
Yeah, especially with female shooters and female. Go ahead.
I tell you, let's take a break. Let's come back. Save that thought, and let's pick up on that when we come back from a break. So we'll step outside. We'll be right back after this.
PSE Archery has always dominated the speed category. Now, the most revolutionary cam system ever to hit the market has perfected the shooting experience. Introducing PSE's Evolve Cam System, featuring extremely high let-off capabilities and the smoothest draw cycle in history. No other cam system has ever delivered this level of total comfort and total control. Experience PSE. Experience performance.
Hey, we're back, third segment of the show, talking to Carrie Z about BowCast. Before we went to the break, we were talking a little bit about people that might be afraid to approach people and ask those questions. And you mentioned the female side. Explain a little bit of that, because you stepped out there with BowCast in the beginning. Did you get a lot of feedback from females shooting at that time, asking a lot of questions to you?
Back then I did. I don't know. And a lot of people, you either had the camp where, oh my God, it's another girl, or it was, oh, it's a girl, and she's actually asking the dumb questions that I'm too afraid to ask.
Right.
Which was great, because I was like, whatever. You guys can think I'm a dumb blonde if you want. I still need to know the answer to the question.
Right.
That's great.
Right.
I don't care what you think. I need to be a better shooter, and if you think I'm an idiot for asking this question, I don't really care.
Right.
Can you just answer the question? And seriously,
right.
And I think that attitude in some ways impressed some people, because they were like, wow, she legitimately wants the answer. Here's the answer,
Right.
Or also let some females know that it's okay to not know everything and not be the hot shot in the room. And I don't know, just ask the question. Who cares? If you have it as a question, probably 10 other people want to know the answer too.
Well,
I don't feel like it's that way anymore.
I don't think so much anymore, but back then, I like I said, if you were in that inner circle at the pro shop, you're kind of afraid to ask those questions. But
yeah,
it's like you say in school, the only stupid question is the one you don't ask.
True.
And that's true. Oh yeah, I'd walk into some pro shops and they'd be like, where's your husband? Where's your boyfriend? You buying a bow for him? No, I'm buying one for me. Thanks. Here's my money. Would you want my money?
Right. If not, I'll go somewhere else.
So, do you want my money or not? Because I'll go somewhere else, whatever. But yeah, it sucked back then, honestly, to be a girl doing anything in the outdoor world, I swear. And I'm sure there are lots of women out there who took way more flack than I did. That's for sure. A lot of these gals, but
no doubt about it,
just got hated on and just lambasted. And
so we had a lady when we were at Cabela's. We were at Saginaw, and she drove over an hour plus from Royal Oak just to come up to shoot a bow, so nobody would see her shooting. So 2 things: 1, nobody would recognize her, and 2, she would be too embarrassed if she messed up.
Yeah.
And we're like, it's okay. We don't care.
She'd never shot a bow before. We got a bow sized up for her, got her in the archery range, and she shot, and she hit and popped a balloon, and you'd have thought she shot the world's biggest buck. It was so cool to watch that. You know, I don't know if she ever took up archery, but I mean, for that moment in time, you know, she won it all, you know, and it was so cool to see.
You know, she's right though. I mean, even I generally avoid shooting the bows at ATA because it's mostly men, and I don't know. I know there's people there that snicker or whatever, and it's just super annoying and intimidating. And ironically, for as much self-confidence as I have, I am somewhat easily intimidated, especially about when it comes to things that I'm not super knowledgeable about. I feel like I know quite a bit about archery, but I mean, the amount that I don't know is stacks and stacks above and beyond what I do know. And even like you go to some of these, especially like the pro shops, God help you if you're a woman who's 6 feet tall and blonde and walks in by yourself. The guys are just obnoxious. And some of them are trying so hard to help. They genuinely are. I understand. They genuinely want. They think it's so cool. There's this chick in there and she's by herself. They really, really, really are. But they don't understand how obnoxious and annoying they're being, you know, at the same time. Yeah. And like just overwhelming that person. Just let her go in there and shoot, man. Like, don't try to give her tips. Don't try to. Like I said, I appreciate that. I really do. But it is hard sometimes when it's kind of an anomaly as a female to walk into a pro shop, especially by yourself, or especially if you're a little older and you haven't been doing it all year and you're not this 22-year-old pretty little girl who walks in who weighs 110 pounds. You know, you're self-conscious to begin with, and then add in that you're shooting bows in front of these guys who you know are watching you. You can pretend they're not all you want. They're watching you. It doesn't matter how old you are, how young you are, how ugly or pretty. They're watching you because you're an anomaly. You know, it's the truth. So it is kind of a little hard. So I understand where she's coming from. It sucks, but I understand. Well,
you know, you talk about ATA. That's something I have noticed in the last couple of years, that there are more women shooters on the shooting lines, at ATA.
There are.
You know, which I think is so cool. You know, if you want to come shoot bows, we're at ATA. I know. Come shoot with us because we have a blast.
I know. We gotta have fun.
We're just a cut up.
And there are companies who really go out of their way to make, not that you have to, and please don't misunderstand everybody listening. I do not feel like you have to make any sort of extra special concession because of my anatomy. Please do not misunderstand me at all. But I do appreciate the companies that go above and beyond to joke with me as much as they do with the guys, or to go out of their way. I don't shoot 65 pounds. I don't need to shoot 65 pounds. And my draw length is usually an inch less than all the guys, you know. And if you don't have a bow that's set up that I can shoot, well, that sucks. But there are some companies who are like, you know what, give me 15 minutes, come back, we'll lower the poundage, it'll be fine, or whatever, you know. Like, they'll
accommodating.
Really, yes. Where there are some companies who could care less,
because
I'm not their demographic, and that's okay.
Right.
I understand that. I am not their, market. Absolutely understand that. Do not expect you to bend over backwards for me if you're probably not going to make any money off of me anyway. I understand that. But the last couple of years, I do feel like women are gaining a little more confidence. There are a lot more female role models out there. There's a lot more more women getting involved. So it's not so much of an anomaly to see a woman walk into a pro shop alone as it was, God help, 10 years ago. You've been like the first. We had one lady in your last month.
Right. Yeah.
No, it's becoming mainstream now that you get you and children for that matter.
Yeah.
Parents bringing in their youngsters, giving them bringing in their youngsters and getting them started in something that they can actually do maybe in the backyard or something to that nature. And these companies are starting to realize this, so they're starting to really focus in on whether it be the female side of it or kids in general. Coming out with the lower poundage bows, coming out with the various colors of bows, and just kind of just saying, hey, we see you're there, and come try us out because, they,
we want to work with you.
Exactly.
So is that something with BowCast maybe that will you lean an episode or two maybe towards youngsters, maybe for parents that might be choosing something?
Yes. That was actually one of the things. One person reached out because I had done a blog series on hunt, fish, travel. Actually, one of my staff writers several years ago had written how to get your child into archery. Because it is hard sometimes, especially if they're not really that interested, but you know that it's better than playing video games. So you're going to, once if you can get them shooting, they will love it. It's just getting them shooting sometimes that's hardest. And somebody had referenced that article and they were like, are you going to do something like this with the podcast? Because I forget how old he was, son listens to podcasts, and I'd have him listen to that episode. And I was like, yeah, for sure. Of course. Well, so there are so many facets and demographics and markets when it comes to archery to conquer with this show. I don't know that I'll be bored for the next 5 years.
Right?
Seriously.
No, exactly. Because, like I said, there's just so much in each genre. There's so much to talk about.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're going to be busy.
I'm excited.
Well, good, and you got something to look forward to, and take 2.0 all the way and keep on going with it and run with it, and don't look back.
I know.
Circling back around to the show a little bit. Episode 1, you talking with Tim Endsley. I found out a little something I did not know. And Danny and I are going to be shooting tack for the second year here in Michigan at the end of August. And you guys had mentioned, and I remember vividly because I wanted to go so bad, and I could not go to shoot at the bird. And it was out of my price range. It was out of my capability of getting time off work and flying out and shoot, all that. And quite honestly, I was scared to death to shoot anything over 40 yards at that time.
I know, right? And the insane shots that they put up at the bird.
So there's no way I was going to be able to do that or be able to do it even if I got there. But long story short, what I didn't know is you guys were mentioning that TAC actually bought the rights to those shoots from them, and that's where Total Archery Challenge kind of grew out of.
It did. So for listeners who aren't familiar with the bird, BowCast at the Bird was the very first really extreme archery event, 3D archery event. It was the brainchild of Neil Roney and Anthony Dixon. They decided they were going to get a bunch of targets, put it up at Snowbird Mountain in Utah, where they held the Olympics. Put them up all over the mountain, and you were going to shoot up and then shoot back down. And it was nuts. It was insane. These crazy yardages and these insane shots. And the first year was really, really well received. People traveled from all over the country. We had all the big name sponsors were there, and it was such a cool event. And I think I started with the second one, where I can't remember if there were 4 or 5 of them. I think only 4 of them. Originally, Anthony Dixon wanted to do the same thing that Total Archery Challenge is doing now. He wanted to buy a semi, put a bunch of targets in there, and travel all over the country, setting up these really unique experiences and just crazy 3D shoots all over the country. But then at the time he started his clothing company, and I don't remember, but I think he was focusing on that. So he sold the rights, and it became Total Archery Challenge, which now has I don't know how many locations all across the country.
A lot.
And it just and they're doing so well.
Until COVID came along this year. Now there's only 5, but Michigan's one of them.
I know.
Right.
And we're going to go. I'm so excited. Well, when they put the Michigan date out and they opened it up for registration, they got such a great response last year with the sales of tickets for that event that they said, well, they broke they had a problem selling tickets because the website kept crashing. So they beefed up the website so it wouldn't crash. Michigan killed it. First day they crashed the website again, and they sold out. So Danny and I are like, we can't go now. We had no way of going, and I was really bummed about it. Yeah. So then COVID hit, and they canceled them all, and then they opened up 5. Well, Michigan being sold out, obviously they're coming to Michigan. So they moved the date back, and I said, there's people that's not going to be able to make it. And I said, I want on that registration list. So we got on, and the first day that they popped, I bought us tickets for it. So that's how we got back in to go this year.
Amazing. That's so fun.
It is. It's
That's
a ride.
Cool. Yeah, TAC was originally the BowCast at the Bird.
That's cool. I didn't know that until I was listening to your episode, and I'm like, wow, that is so cool.
A couple of comments rolling in. Kristen Durbin Monroe says, hey, Carrie Z, glad to hear about the relaunch. Yay. Dan Newmer, S3DA's popularity has increased exponentially over the last few years here in Wisconsin. It has fueled a whole new generations of young, incredible shooters.
Absolutely. And I think we're seeing that across the nation. The explosion with Total Archery Challenge and all the other shoots that are out there as well. It's getting to the point where you have to register for these events right away, or you don't get into them. Yeah, you just don't do them. So.
Exactly.
Sure, I know.
And you guys have got the BowFest event. Is that up in Fond du Lac or up that way?
No, that's all the way as far north as you can get. I mean, literally as you can get. It's like 7 hours for me or something ridiculous. It's, yeah, I think it's a 2 or 3 day event. They have music. They have all these great musicians that play, and it's similar to what Total Archery Challenge is doing. Only they're combining like a music festival as well.
Gotcha.
So we were gonna go this year and couldn't make it up there. It was in July, and then with all COVID and everything's all up in the air. But next year I'm definitely going.
Yeah, it's one of those 3-day events that you go shoot during the day and go listen to a great concert at night.
And hope you can get up the next day to shoot.
Right. Yeah.
And not roll down the hill.
Well, not only from being sore, but then from, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, yeah.
Totally get that.
Right. Well, with Danny, yeah, we kind of talked about it a little bit, and then, the COVID stuff hit, and then, TAC got canceled. Then we got, we actually considered before, when they originally sold out, we're like, well, do you want to go to PA or do you want to go to Tennessee to shoot? I mean, we were that serious about it. We were going to travel, so.
That's cool.
But then they canceled all of them. So, but it worked out. So
yeah,
I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be a good time.
Speaking of that, we've talked about your podcast, but you haven't told anybody where to go find it. How about telling where to go find it?
Sure. You can find it at bowcast.net, facebook.com/bowcast. You can find it on iTunes, Stitcher Radio. There is, just because of how Tim Endsley acquired the show and everything, you may come across FMP BowCast. That is not the same. But it's just because they had changed it from BowCast to FMP BowCast, and then it went idle, and then the pirates got a hold of all the names, and it's just a hot mess. So 2.0. 2.0. So everything is, bowcast.net will give you the links of everywhere that you can listen, subscribe. Should be fun.
Well, speaking of how it's coming back, and those older episodes were there, and now they're not, but you've got them. Are you going to maybe repurpose some of that material?
I am. So I've struggled with this a little bit because, like I said, I just don't want to step on anybody's toes. I don't want anyone to think I'm stepping on anybody's toes or taking that stance where I'm like, oh, I'll just make it better. Because that's not that's not the intent. There's so many cool stories and great content that they shared that I think I might do like little 5, 10, 20-minute Throwback Thursday episodes eventually. Once the show really gets rolling, I'll go back and take some of those episodes and just clip out some of the segments and stuff and maybe reshare them. Because not only do I think that new listeners need to understand the origins and history of the show itself, but I also think it'll be great synergy for those who did listen to those and be really nostalgic and walk down memory lane when they hear some of the stuff.
That's cool. Yeah, that'll be awesome. Just those good little golden nuggets that kind of solidify a concept or a practice style or something like that.
Absolutely.
All right, cool. Listen, I'll tell you what, let's take our last break, come back. I got a question for you. Speaking around with the relaunch and everything. So we're going to step outside, take our last break, and we'll be right back after this.
Acceleration is part of PSE's DNA. PSE pioneered the speed movement. Now they've developed the vapor category to help you find the most powerful bows on the market to fit you.
High speed equates to intense power and building the momentum you need to be successful. Are you a vapor shooter? Find out at psearchery.com.
Welcome back. Fourth segment of the show. And before I ask my question, a big shout out to Andy Eberhard. He says, "Hey, hi Carrie. Hey guys, how'd you shoot yesterday?" We actually saw Andy at the range yesterday. He come up and says, "Hey Mike," and I knew the name, but I'd never put the name and face together. And he walked up, and we had a good chat. But I said, man, listen tomorrow night. We're going to have Carrie on. And he remembered the old BowCast episode, so it's pretty cool. So big shout out to you.
That's really cool.
Andy, we hit foam. We had a good day.
I didn't lose any arrows. Actually, I was very pleased with the way I shot.
We didn't lose or bust an arrow.
I want to give just a quick shout out to PSE. The bow, the NXT 31 I got, that is the best shooting bow out of the box I've ever had. Period. Bar none. It was easy to tune. and it's just, I can't say enough good things about it. I've never had a bow shoot that good out of the box. So
they were pretty nice.
Yeah. So all right. So the question I was going to ask, the relaunch, and you and I and Danny, we talked about this before the show about how it used to be in the forums and the amount of knowledge that people would give in those forums, and it didn't matter if you were, a Ted Nugent style celebrity, or if you were, just one of us guys who pick up a bow and shot. They treated everybody the same in the forums. Is that something that you're thinking about bringing back, or are you not to that point yet?
I haven't. I'm a one-woman show, and I have a full-time job and 3 other shows to host. So I already moderate 2 forums and a writing contest. I don't really see that right now. If anyone's listening and would like to help me moderate something like that, then we can discuss it. But it's a lot of work to keep up on something like that. It's a lot of work. So I have thought about it, but for right now, the answer is not at this time. Like I said, just because I'm a team of one, and there are only so many hours in the day.
Okay, well, without giving too much away, because we want people to go listen, there's 4 episodes out. What have you got on the first 4? What are we listening to? I already know the answer, but for those that are listening and watching.
They're so fun. Well, the first one is basically a recap of what we just talked about, why the relaunch. The second one, Dave Cousins come on, and oh my gosh, when we recorded it was like right during the lockdown, during the pandemic, and nobody could go anywhere. So we were just talking about how to stay sharp just in your backyard, even at 10 yards or 5 yards or whatever. And some of the tips that he gives is just spectacular. Then, of course, we have Trent Marsh, who is one of my best friends ever. And he now works for Spy Point. So I was like, well, let's talk about setting up a trail camera. And one of the 3 tips that he gave I was like, why have I never known this? Because I hunt public land and I don't put on a lot of trail cams for one thing. But really, I was like, oh, that totally makes sense.
Right.
And then the third one was with Will Brantley. And we went through, so every year, he does the write-up and the review of all the new bows for Field and Stream. And he works for Outdoor Life and all that. And so I was like, well, would you mind coming on and just kind of walking me through the steps that you go through with each bow? Because I think it would be really beneficial if you're in the market for a new bow, the things that you might need to pay attention to or the things you should do before purchasing one. Because a bow is a big investment.
Right.
So those are the first 4. We've got Michael Lee coming up. We've got Chuck Cooley, who I'm going to have on again because we're going to talk about shooting your bow with eyeglasses. I do wear glasses. I hate my contacts. I can't even explain to you how much I hate wearing my contacts when I'm trying to shoot. And he's like, well, I'll show you how to shoot with your glasses on. And the angels started singing around him, let me tell you. Then we've got Danny Hinton, who is the one who helps Will Brantley do all the reviewing. And that episode there, the man is just like a waterfall of archery information. It's going to be tough even editing that because there's so much little tidbits that I want to make sure are highlighted. And then, like I said, we've got Justin Mao about the Chinese archery, and we've got quite a few people that I am looking to schedule just different products. I don't know, just what are different rests? How do you figure out your draw length? Archery tech. I'm going to have Easton on again. I mean, just all these really great, informative, and educational episodes that personally, I need a refresher on. I ain't even gonna lie, because it's been 10 years since I've heard anything about these. And yes, I could Google it, but sometimes it's just better being able to ask questions. And like we said, because gear and equipment changes over the years,
right?
Might be, Oh yeah, and I'm gonna have Danny Hinton on again. We're gonna talk about walkback tuning. I don't even know what that is, but I'm really excited about it because he's like, it's gonna blow your mind, and I'm like, okay. So
I've done walkback tuning. It's pretty cool.
See, yeah, okay.
Yeah,
so I'm super excited.
That's all I'm gonna say. After you do that episode, get back in touch with me, and I'll tell you what happened to me when I was just doing my walkback tuning. You'll get a laugh out of it. I'm not going to spoil it right now. Right. I felt like an idiot.
That's awesome. See, but that's just it. How long have you been shooting? And you're like,
yeah.
Wait.
I'm like, did I really do that? Oh man.
I know. We all can use a refresher.
Yeah.
We all can learn something.
Right.
And it's just exciting to to be able to take this journey again with literally where I started in the archery world.
Right. Yeah, I think, man, that was back in 07, like 08, somewhere in there.
Ago.
Yeah. And and now you're BowCast. That's awesome.
It's craziness.
There's something about the mystical flight of the arrow. I don't know. There's something very primal about it that just it sucks you in, man.
Well, you can. Well,
it does.
We talked about that yesterday, kind of, when we were talking about the flight of the arrows. Listening to them. From the release of the bow, you hear it, and then all of a sudden you hear it hit the target, or vice versa, or in some cases might hit a leaf, it might hit a branch. Some things happen.
Or hopefully you hear it hit the side of a deer.
Right?
Yeah, you're whacked.
Yeah, it's I don't know, man. There's just something really cool about it. It's different pulling the trigger on a firearm. It's totally different.
It
huge
is.
difference.
It's very meditative. Like I know it's super cheesy, but you're very zen when you're shooting archery.
Mm-hmm.
You're very concentrated and focused.
Okay, speaking of that, do you have a process that you go through with every shot?
Are you asking me about Ralph?
No.
Okay, because that's...
No, this is yes.
Okay, so you have
I do.
a methodical process?
I do. I like square up the hips, shake the shoulders a little bit, and then I walk through route, which I joke, but when I say it, I honest to God, back in the day, Anthony and Anil, when you signed up for their newsletter, you got a PDF booklet for Ralph, and it's RALPH, raise, aim, level, pin, hold. I literally walk through that every time.
Okay.
Every time. Not when I'm hunting, obviously, but when I'm target practicing.
No, right. I gotcha.
Oh.
Well, I just wondered, yeah.
Literally the same thing over and over again.
Because I've got this very methodical process, and it has to go exactly in order for me to be able to, especially when I'm shooting target archery. And if I'm struggling, Danny will say, he's like, just shoot the bow. Stop thinking and just shoot the blank and bow.
Literally.
He remembers the night, too. I mean, I'm back there, and I'm wrenching on the bow, and I'm messing with the sights, and I had everything. I was just a hot mess.
Literally, he was between every arrow, and there's only 3 arrows in an end. Between every arrow, he was messing himself up and then getting worse when he'd walk back. And it's funny because my brother is the same way at bowling. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm living in repeat land here. And I looked at him and I said, just shoot the blanking bow.
Hilarious.
But you gotta have a process.
Funny.
You do, absolutely.
So
you do. It keeps you focused.
It does. And then when you don't focus, you do something stupid like forget to put your flipper rest up when you shoot, and that happened during a spot shoot on me.
Yeah.
Because somebody said something in the middle, and because we were standing in the wrong order, okay, on the line to shoot. There's 4 of us, and we're shooting at a 80 centimeter face target at 60 meters, and it's like we're all shooting at the same target. It doesn't matter. Well, if this was an officially sanctioned tournament, it has to be this way. So we switched. Well, I forgot to flip my rest up because I'd already knocked the arrow, had my release on, but I didn't flip it. Well, what did I do? I made the move, turn around, rip back, and all of a sudden burned one into the ground at about 35 yards.
Oh, no.
And I'm like, the process. The process.
Yep. So. Process works. Stick with the process.
Right? Andy says, talking about his son about that, he said drawing back and having the confidence that he's going to hit what he's aiming at, even if it's a long range, is what he likes about archery.
Absolutely.
That's perfectly put.
It is.
Perfectly.
If it's paper, you got to have the confidence to rip that shot, and if you don't, then step up to where you have that confidence and start working your way backwards. That's what it's all about, and just keep edging out of that comfort zone just a little bit every time, and move that effective range back.
Yep, exactly, and then it becomes fun, like we did yesterday. It was fun.
It was a blast.
We had fun.
It was so much fun to get back out on a tournament, or not a tournament, but on a course.
On a 3D
course.
3D course, so.
And my brother says, keeping your thumb off the trigger.
Yeah,
True story.
We watched somebody punch themselves in the nose yesterday.
It was a great Mike Tyson right-hand cross.
The first time I shot my Stanislavski release, the first time I really started shooting a thumb release. And I was here at home, in the first 10 shots, I almost knocked myself out. I mean, I saw stars.
We've all done it.
Oh, my God.
Did it one time.
We have all done it.
So,
you know what? We got a few minutes left. How's your deer hunting outlook for this fall looking?
Pretty good. I think I have 2 spots that I've been kind of scouting this summer. 2 spots picked out. It's always hard. It's such a crapshoot on public land.
Right.
And I just bought a house over the winter, so now I'm someplace permanent, so I can find spots that I can concentrate on a little more. You know, you figure out the drive distance, etc. Well, you don't want to find this great spot and spend all this time and hours scouting and then be like, oh, well, now I just moved permanently and now it's an hour and a half away, so now I got to start over.
Right.
So I found some really good spots, I think. Wisconsin's always great for deer hunting, and bow hunting is a breeze because there's never anybody out there, especially during the week if you can go right after work or whatever.
Really?
But yeah. I hardly ever run into anybody ever. Even on the weekends, half the time I run into more people on horseback than I do bow hunters.
Wow.
Yeah, it's true. And I can imagine that up north, it's even like north of Highway 10, it's probably even more so. But it's very rare that I run into somebody out bow hunting on public land here.
All right, so we're going to expect good reports from Carrie Z this fall about her archery.
Yeah, we're going to hold you to
Right?
it.
I am fired up. Got my roots down, got my focus back, got my podcast relaunched,
That's awesome.
There you go.
ready to go.
Well, I'm telling you what,
Fall.
guys and gals who are listening and watching, both on the podcast and live stream, if you're thinking about getting into archery, this is a must-have listen.
Yeah.
On your iPhone or however you listen to podcasts. You've got to check it out. And when she starts releasing some of the old nuggets from those past shows, I'm telling you, there's stuff there that's just gold. So you make sure and get that on your list.
Right, exactly. And Linda and Ed Thornhill. I used to shoot 80 yards with a recurve before compounds came along. That was hard.
That's a poke.
And it tells you how old I am.
It is.
Wow.
It almost goes along those lines of the Denny Steiner stories.
Yeah, that's a story. If you
him and Paul Penix together, good stories.
Well, it goes right back to what you were talking about, taking those long shots and how those guys got beat up for it in the beginning.
Oh, just annihilated, yeah.
You know, this was about, 5 years ago we heard this story?
Yeah.
And he was telling the story of, at the time, I was like, okay, I've started shooting longer distance at this time, so I understood it. But when he was hunting an elk somewhere. I don't remember exactly where at. And he said he shot it at 105 yards with his bow. And I looked at him, and with a straight face, he says this. I asked him, I said, what were you thinking when you took the shot? He says, and he paused for a minute with a straight face. He said, I was just wondering what that elk was thinking when that arrow went through him at 105 yards. I'm like, dude, seriously, no, what were you thinking? He's like, that's what I was thinking. Just stone cold. I mean, he's just that kind of guy. Tells a great story. But, back in the day, we just, you never heard of that. But these guys that can shoot, man, they're lights out, and they can do it.
He told a couple other stories about Paul Penix, Pearson, a couple of the old bow guys that
Shepley, Pearson, and Fred
Bear. What they used to do for fun.
For fun, yeah.
And then take on the younger kids. It's a great. I mean, you sit around at ATA and you get introduced to some of these people, and Denny was introduced to us, and man, it was gold. It was gold.
Archery gold. I mean, it's things you hear, behind the scenes. There's some of those things that they're priceless. I mean, hearing these older stories of these guys and some of the crazy things they do for competition, or make a bet on something.
Exactly.
It was great. Good stuff. But before we let you go, once again, where can everybody find BowCast?
Yep, bowcast.net is the easiest place to find it. All the social media channels are there: Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. .com/BowCast. Otherwise, you can find it on Apple Podcasts. You can find it on iTunes, Stitcher Radio, any podcast. I think it's on Spotify. I haven't checked, but I know I submitted it, so it might be on Spotify. I know it's on iTunes or iHeartRadio. It's basically anywhere you can listen to podcasts.
Search podcast, and wherever they point you should be able to find it, right?
Exactly.
All right. Make sure you get over, subscribe to it, follow it, like it, all those things. And for those of you here on our podcast, do the same thing for us if you would on our social media sites. Danny will be re-releasing this episode over on YouTube on Wednesday. So, give us a follow, give us a like, give us a share. If you're over on iTunes, give us a review if you would. That'll help us out. And make sure you go over and catch BowCast over on iTunes. Give them a review as well and help them out. So for those of you on the podcast, that'll do it for us this week. We'll be back again next week. You all take care. This episode was brought to you by PSE Archery,
Buck Bait,
Better the Hunt,
Rebel 6 Rubs and Seasonings,
Easy Cut,
Lim Walker Game Calls,
Sunrise Archery,
Total Heat,
Hunter's Blend Coffee,
Packer Max,
Fourth Arrow Camera Arms,
Scent Blocker,
Scent Lock,
Copper John,
and Stanislavski Release Aids.
Thanks for listening, and join us again here next week. Until then, remember, as we always like to say, if you're out on the water or in the woods, shoot straight and be safe. Until next week on the Up North Journal.